Welcome to episode 22 in our series on Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto's The Path of the Just, and we are midway through chapter 13, and this deals with the virtue of abstinence. And in the first half, the Ramchal was warning us of various levels of abstinence and how we are instructed by God to keep ourselves holy. We are allowed to choose what we want to do, but I think God's test is for us to choose what is right for us and what would keep us holy. There are many things that perhaps are permissible, but they maybe in some ways detract from our holiness, especially if they are overdone or we go to one extreme. So the Ramchal here is saying, keep yourself safe and abstain sometimes. It's the better thing. If you really want to refine your character, sometimes this discipline that we impose on ourselves does something to your character. It refines your character, it strengthens your character, it allows you to do more in your life in terms of now what you are able to do, and perhaps your madrega goes up at the same time. So we're going to continue the second half of this chapter, and in the beginning of this section the Ramchal is going to deal with the idea of abstinence as an antidote to sin. So he continues, we will now define the type of abstinence that is good, having clarified for ourselves that everything that goes on in this world is designed to test man, as we have written and proven previously, and having also discerned man's great weaknesses as well as his attraction to those things that are harmful, it becomes compellingly clear that one should flee from these contingencies as best he can, in order to protect himself from the evil that follows in their footsteps. For there is no worldly pleasure that, in its wake, does not attract some form of sinning. For example, food and drink, when free of all dietary prohibitions, are permitted. However, filling the stomach leads one to rebelliousness against God, and the drinking of wine leads to adultery and other such evils. Even more at risk is a person who has accustomed himself to be satiated through eating and drinking. If he just once lacks what he is used to, he will suffer and will be keenly aware of his deprivation. Consequently, he will throw himself into the harsh pursuit of business and the struggle for possessions, so that his table will be arranged the way he desires. From there he will be drawn to iniquity and theft, and from there towards the taking of oaths, and towards all the other sins that follow. He will furthermore remove himself from the service of the Eternal, from Torah and from prayer. So that's very, very true. Once you're on that slippery slope, it's almost certain that other bad things will present themselves to you, and you will have far less control than you would normally, and you will probably go down these paths that perhaps are detrimental to you. Now the Rambam is going to describe how creating norms of abstinence before one is drawn to sinning. So that's conditioning yourself to have some sort of framework and some system and some disciplines in your life. And he continues, he would have been spared all of this if only he hadn't allowed himself to be drawn towards these pleasures at the outset. In a similar vein, our sages said in reference to a wayward and rebellious son from Sanhedrin 72a, the Torah understood where his thoughts were leading to. Similarly, in references to adultery, they said in Sota 2a, anyone who sees a disgraced Sota or adulteress should abstain from drinking wine. Take this to heart. This is an excellent method for rescuing oneself from one's evil inclination. Once a person is about to sin, it will be difficult for him to vanquish and conquer the evil inclination. It is therefore necessary that, while he is still far from sinning, he continue to keep his distance from sins. Then the evil inclination will find it difficult to bring him closer to sinning. And now Ramchal is going to describe abstinence within the marital relationship. So he continues. For example, cohabitation with one's wife is totally permissible. Yet ablutions were decreed for those who had seminal emissions, so that, and he quotes from Brachot 22a, Torah scholars would not seek the company of their wives the way roosters do. Although the actual act is permissible, it serves to stamp a person's being with lustful desire, and from there one is likely to be drawn to the forbidden, as stated by our rabbis of blessed memory. And he quotes from Sanhedrin 107a, there is a small organ in man. When he satiates it, it hungers. When he starves it, it becomes satiated. They said about Rabbi Eliezer that, even at the right time and the proper moment, he quotes from Nadarim 20b, he would expose a handbreadth and conceal 2 handbreadths, and it seemed as though he was compelled by a demon to deny himself pleasure even in the moment of pleasure. Regarding clothing and ornaments, the Torah made no prohibitions regarding their beauty or style. It did, however, prescribe that they should not contain kilayim, or mixed fibers of wool and linen, and it laid down the need for tzitzits, and they are all permissible. But who is not aware that wearing fancy or embroidered garments leads to arrogance and brings one closer to adultery as well? And we may add envy, lust, and extortion that develop through man's pursuit of all that he regards as precious. Our sages of blessed memory have told us in Bereshis Rabbah 22 verse 6, when the evil inclination sees a person adjusting his heel, tidying his garments and grooming his hair, it says, "This one is mine." Now the Ramchal is going to describe the correct way to walk. So he continues, strolling and talking, as long as they do not involve something forbidden, are certainly permissible according to the letter of the law. Yet, how much neglect of Torah they generate, how much slander, how much lying, how much flippancy. And it also states in Mishlei 10:19, one who overindulges in speech cannot avoid sinning. In summation, since all of one's dealings in this world are extremely dangerous, how can we not extol one who wishes to flee and distance himself greatly from them? This is what is involved when referring to the beneficial types of abstinence. One must not benefit from anything in the world other than what is essential to one's individual nature. It was for this that the Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, extolled himself in the previously mentioned passage that he never, and he quotes, never derived any pleasure from this world, not even with his little finger. Despite the fact that he was the Nasi of Israel, and his table befitted a king, as dictated by the honor due to a Nasi, as they of blessed memory said in Avodah Zarah 11a, and I quote, there are 2 nations in your womb. And that's quoted from Bereshis 25 verse 23. This refers to Rebbe and Antoninus, whose tables were never lacking neither lettuce nor pumpkin nor radish, neither during the dry season nor during the rainy season. And Chizkiyahu, king of Yehuda, similarly only benefited from what is essential. The other passages that I've mentioned confirm and demonstrate that a person has the need to abstain from all worldly pleasures so as not to endanger himself. You may of course ask, if this in fact is something both necessary and vital, why didn't the sages enact legislation for this the way they did for other rabbinic enactments? The answer is clear and simple. The sages only enacted decrees. And he quotes from Baba Kama 79b, and he quotes that the majority of people could abide by. And the majority of people cannot attain piousness. It is enough of an achievement for them to be righteous. Now the Ramchal is going to describe how abstinence is only really for the select few, and through them the whole nation can be elevated. So the Ramchal continues. However, those singular individuals amongst the nation whose desire is to attain the closeness of the Blessed One and to bring, through their merits, spiritual benefits to the remaining masses who are dependent upon them, they are the ones who should fulfill the tenets of the pious that others are incapable of, i.e., the provisions of abstinence mentioned here. This is the Eternal's express choice, for it is impossible for the entire nation to be equally on one footing, since there are varying levels among them, each person in accord with his intelligence. But at least there are select individuals who can develop their capabilities thoroughly, and through those who are capable, those who are not will also attain the Eternal's love and his divine presence, similar to what they of blessed memory taught in a Midrash when referring to the 4 species of the lulav. And this is taken from Vayikra Rabbah, chapter 30. And I quote, "Let these come and atone for those." And we know what Eliyahu of blessed memory said to Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi after the incident involving Ula bar Koshev, when Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi responded, "Isn't that a Mishnah?" And Eliyahu replies, "It is it Mishnah's Hasidim, the tenets of the pious?" So what is this story regarding Ula bar Koshev? Ula bar Koshev was wanted by the Roman kingdom. He fled and went to Lod, to Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi's dwelling. They came and surrounded the city and said, "If you don't give him to us, we will destroy the city." Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi went to him, Ula, and appeased him and gave him to the Roman authorities. Eliyahu Hanavi used to reveal himself to him and teach him. Since that day he stopped to reveal himself anymore. And Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi fasted a few times, and then Eliyahu Hanavi revealed himself again and said, "Should I reveal myself to informers?" And Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi responded, "Didn't I do according to the rabbinic teaching?" And Eliyahu answered, "Is this a teaching for the pious?" So this, I think, refers to, I've learned this before in Mishnah Torah, when you are allowed to give up a fellow Jew and when you shouldn't. So this is an example that was, I think, I've learned before in that Mishnah Torah. And the Ramchal continues with a description of harmful types of abstinence. Harmful abstinence, however, resembles the ways of the foolish Gentiles who not only refrain from what is unessential, but also deny themselves what is essential and chastise themselves, often in strange ways, which the Eternal totally rejects. The sages have said in Ta'anis, a person is not allowed to mortify himself. And when referring to charity, they said in Yerushalmi Peah 8 verse 9, whoever needs to take and doesn't is regarded as if he had shed blood. And also they quote from Ta'anis 22b, into a living being, quoted from Bereshis, means that it is your duty to sustain the soul that I, God, implanted within you. And also Ta'anis 11a, whoever fasts regularly is called a sinner. And our sages established that this relates to one who is not able to withstand self-affliction. So there are limits to what we should do. We shouldn't flagellate ourselves in any way or somehow mortify ourselves unnecessarily, because we're making our soul suffer ultimately. We have to find that balance between abstinence and too much. And now the Ramchal is going to describe the need to care for one's physical well-being. So the Ramchal continues. Furthermore, Hillel used to say the statement, one who is beneficent to his own soul is a pious person. That's from Mishlei 11:17. Refers to the eating of breakfast. And Hillel would wash his face and hands in honor of his heavenly master, deriving this a fortiori from the practice that prevailed at the time of washing the statues that represented kings. That's from Vayikra Rabbah 34:3. The fundamental rule to be derived from this is as follows. A person should abstain from any worldly matters that are unessential. On the other hand, anything that he regards as essential for whatever reason must not be abstained from, because it is essential to him. But if he disregards this principle and abstains from it, he is a sinner. This is a sound rule, yet the application of specifics in conformity to this rule is left to one's discretion, and the person will be extolled in accordance with the degree of his intelligence. That's from Mishlei 12:8. It is impossible to assemble all the specifics, since they are so numerous, and a man's mind cannot encompass all of them. Rather, one must deal with them one by one, each at its appropriate time. So very important that I think we have to make our abstinence that we choose for ourselves kind of bespoke to our own personalities. Someone who doesn't miss food would not regard abstinence of a certain type of food as difficult. So therefore, how are you testing yourself, or how are you restricting yourself? Also, another way that someone who doesn't go to shul and takes it upon himself to make sure that he doesn't miss a minyan day in, day out, is taking upon himself something that someone who's a regular at shul does not find any sort of difficulty in doing. So I think the Ramchal here is saying also we must see what is difficult for ourselves and perhaps use that as a platform to work on ourselves. And also I think the Rambam gives an excellent rundown of this idea of abstinence and the limits it should be taken to in his Mishnah Torah, I believe it's Hilchot Deot, which we've covered previously in another series. And so I enjoyed that. And the next episode, chapter 14, will deal with the elements of abstinence, so a more detailed account of the concept of abstinence.